I spent 6 years as a billionaire heir's secret companion, and the day my contract ended, he framed me for a felony to save his heiress fiancée. This is the story I've hidden for a decade. The one that still makes my hands shake when I speak it aloud. If you've ever given every piece of yourself to someone who treated you like you were disposable, you'll feel every word of this in your bones. My name is Leora. When I was 16, a tornado flattened my family's farm in rural Iowa. The insurance company, owned by the Voss family, Chicago's oldest old money dynasty, denied our claim entirely. Worse, they sued my parents for insurance fraud, threatening 20 years in prison and $4.2 million in damages we could never pay. That's when the Voss family matriarch, Killian's grandmother, gave me a choice. Sign a 6-year contract to be Killian Voss's personal live-in assistant, and every debt would be wiped clean. Or watch my parents rot behind bars. I signed my name that day. I had no idea I'd just signed away 6 years of my dignity, my autonomy, and my will to believe I was worth anything more than crumbs. Killian Voss was 21 then, the golden heir to the Voss fortune, the kind of man who made front-page news just for walking down Michigan Avenue. I moved into his penthouse in the sky, polished his custom silver, organized his schedule, and kept his life running like clockwork. For 6 months, he barely glanced at me. Until the night I knocked over a limited edition single malt whiskey from his private collection, worth more than my family's entire farm. The head housekeeper dragged me into the foyer, screaming that she'd have me thrown out and my parents' fraud case reopened that same night. That's when Killian walked in. He didn't yell. He just stepped between me and the housekeeper, wrapped his hand around my bleeding palm sliced open by broken glass, and said, "It's just a bottle. No one here gets to hurt her." He cleaned my cuts that night, handed me a tube of ointment. And for the first time in my life, I felt like someone actually saw me. That's the cruel thing about crumbs when you're starving, you'll mistake them for a feast. I fell for him that night. Stupid, naive, hopelessly. On my 18th birthday, he came to my tiny maid's room. He kissed me, and I let him. I thought this was the start of something real. I was so wrong. For the next 6 years, I was his secret. We spent nearly every night together, but in the light of day, I was nothing but the help. He never called me by my name in front of anyone. He never took me anywhere. When he announced his engagement to his childhood sweetheart, Gwendolyn Astor, on the cover of Vogue, I heard about it from the news, not from his mouth. In that interview, he looked straight into the camera and said, "Gwen is the only woman I'll ever love. No one else will ever have a piece of my heart, my life, or my future." That's when I learned the truth. Gwen was a devout woman from a strict religious family. Sworn to celibacy before marriage. I was nothing but a body to him, a way to pass the time until his wedding night. The night he saved me from the housekeeper? It was the same day he proposed to Gwen. He was just in a good mood. I felt my chest crack open that day. But the worst was still yet to come. The first time he broke me for good was at their engagement gala, in front of every CEO, celebrity, and politician in Chicago. Gwen spilled an entire bottle of $5,000 red wine down her custom couture gown, then screamed that I'd shoved her. She ordered me to kneel on the marble steps outside the ballroom, in the December Chicago snow, and lick the wine stains off the stone with my tongue. It was 10 degrees below zero. My thin uniform offered no protection. I knelt there for 4 hours, my fingers turning blue, my lips cracking and bleeding, while the party raged on inside. When Killian finally stepped outside, I lifted my head, stupidly hoping he'd save me. Instead, Gwen threw herself into his arms, sobbing that I'd terrified her. Killian's gaze flicked over me, cold and unfeeling, and said, "She's right. You should know your place." He wrapped his coat around Gwen and walked back inside. He never tossed me a jacket. Never said a single kind word. I passed out in the snow an hour later, and was dragged back to my room by the kitchen staff. I should have run then. But my contract wasn't up. My parents were still under the Voss family's thumb. I had nowhere to go. The second time he broke me was during Gwen's family's gubernatorial campaign. They needed a viral charity moment, a 10-mile hike through the Appalachian Mountains to deliver supplies to impoverished families, live streamed to millions. Gwen refused to do it. She said the rocks would ruin her designer boots, the sun would damage her skin, the hike was beneath her. Killian came to my room that night. He didn't ask. He told me I'd do the hike for her. I'd wear her clothes, carry her 20-pound supply pack, and the cameras would only film my back. No one would know it was me. I walked that 10 miles on broken, rocky terrain. My boots wore through within the first mile, the soles of my feet tearing open, blood seeping into my socks. I twisted my ankle halfway through, and still had to keep going. When I slipped and fell down a steep embankment, my arms shredded by tree branches, I looked up to see Killian's luxury SUV idling on the road above. He was sitting in the passenger seat, laughing with Gwen. He never even rolled down the window to check if I was alive. I crossed the finish line bleeding and shaking. Gwen stepped in front of the cameras, took the supply bag from my hands, and accepted the cheers and praise of the crowd. I was left on the side of the road, no one to bandage my wounds, no one to care. The third time he broke me, I knew there was no coming back. Gwen ate a handful of nuts she was deathly allergic to at a charity dinner, intentionally, to gain sympathy. She went into anaphylactic shock, and when the paramedics arrived, her best friend screamed that I'd hidden the nuts in her food on purpose. Killian showed up at the hospital, and didn't let me say a single word in my defense. He handed me over to the police, and told them to charge me with aggravated assault. The hospital needed to test a new emergency allergy drug on a human subject to save Gwen. The drug came with brutal side effects, searing full-body pain, organ inflammation, even the risk of permanent damage. Killian struck a deal with the hospital and the DA. I'd test the drug, and he'd get me out on bail. They strapped me to a hospital bed and injected the drug. For 12 hours, I felt like my insides were on fire. Like my veins were filled with acid. I screamed until my throat bled, and passed out 3 times from the pain. Killian never stepped foot in my room. He sat outside Gwen's ICU door the entire time, not a single thought for the woman he'd condemned to torture. When Gwen woke up, he sent a housekeeper to my room with a bottle of cheap painkillers. That was it. No apology. No check-in. Nothing. I should have known the worst was still coming. My 6-year contract ended in 30 days. I'd saved every penny I'd earned, and planned to move back to Iowa, to buy my parents a new farm, to start over. But Gwen got behind the wheel of Killian's custom Rolls-Royce, drunk, and hit a college student crossing the street. The boy was left in a coma. The police opened a felony hit-and-run investigation, one that carried a 15-year prison sentence. The security cameras couldn't see the driver's face. The car was registered to Killian. That night, he came to my room. For the first time in 6 years, he looked like he cared. He sat on my bed, and said, "Leora, I need you to do this for me. Confess to the hit and run. I'll make sure you only get 2 years in a minimum security prison. When you get out, I'll give you $10 million. You and your parents will never want anything again. I promise." I said no. I told him my freedom was worth more than any money he could give me. He snapped. He had his team forge every piece of evidence imaginable. Fingerprints on the steering wheel. A fake confession note. Witness statements paid off to say they'd seen me driving. I was arrested at dawn, dragged out of the penthouse in handcuffs, while Killian stood on the balcony, holding a shaking Gwen, and didn't even glance my way. He locked me up in Chicago's most violent women's prison. Gwen paid off the guards and the inmates to make my life a living hell. They beat me every night. They held my hands in boiling water. They locked me in solitary confinement for 3 days at a time, no food, no water. I lived every day wondering if I'd ever make it out alive. 8 months into my sentence, a miracle happened. Killian's personal driver, a man who'd watched every terrible thing he'd done to me, sent my public defender the original dashcam footage from the car. And a recording of Killian and Gwen, laughing as they planned to frame me for the crash. The evidence was irrefutable. My conviction was overturned. All charges were dropped. I walked out of that prison a free woman, for the first time in my life. I didn't go back to Chicago. I took the little money I had left, bought a beat-up pickup truck, and drove west. I didn't stop driving for 3 days, until I hit a tiny town in Montana, population 327, with one stop sign, one general store, and no cell service for miles. I crashed my truck into a ditch on the side of the road in a blizzard, and passed out. When I woke up, I was in a warm bed. The room smelled like pine and sawdust. A man was sitting in the corner, cleaning a hunting rifle. He was broad-shouldered, with a scar across his jaw, and hands calloused from hard work. He said, "I'm Jasper. Found you in the ditch. You're safe here." Jasper was a former Army Ranger, who'd left the military and moved to this town to escape his own demons, running a small woodworking shop on the edge of town. He didn't ask me who I was. He didn't ask why I was running. He just gave me food, a warm place to sleep, and space. For the first time in my life, someone was kind to me without wanting anything in return. I stayed. I used the floral design and event planning skills I'd learned running Killian's lavish parties, and opened a tiny flower shop on Main Street, Leora's Light. The town took me in. They didn't care about my past. They cared that I was kind, that I made beautiful arrangements for their weddings and funerals and birthdays, that I showed up for them. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. Jasper was always there. He built my custom display shelves. He fixed my leaky roof. When tabloid reporters tracked me down, screaming slurs and shoving cameras in my face, he stepped between me and them and said, "Leave. Or I'll make you leave." They ran. He never pushed me to talk about what happened. He never rushed me. He just let me heal, at my own pace. A year after I arrived, we got engaged. He carved a wooden hairpin for me by hand, the tip shaped like a chamomile bloom, my favorite flower. He said, "I don't have $1 billion. But I have a lifetime of love and respect to give you. If you'll have me." I said yes. I should have known Killian wouldn't let me go that easily. He found me a week before our wedding. He walked into my flower shop, in a custom suit, flanked by bodyguards, the entire town going quiet around him. He looked at me, at the woman I'd become, smiling and laughing with a customer, and his eyes filled with tears. "Leora," he said, his voice breaking. "I've been looking for you for a year. I was wrong. I was a monster. Come back to Chicago with me. Marry me. I'll give you everything. The Voss name, the penthouse, the entire fortune. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I just looked at him, cold and calm, and said, "Get out of my shop." He didn't leave. He wrote a check for $50 million, slid it across the counter. He bought the biggest ranch in the valley, put it in my name. He tried to buy me everything he thought I could ever want. I tore up the check. I signed the ranch deed back over to him. I said, "You want to know the funniest thing? For 6 years, I would have crawled through broken glass for a single kind word from you. I would have given anything to hear you say you cared. But now? I don't need a single thing from you. The $50 million you're offering? I make more than that a year with this little flower shop. The mansion and the fortune? I have a home here, built with a man who loves me for exactly who I am, not what I can do for him. The freedom you're promising? I already took it. I didn't wait for you to give it to me. You gave me nothing but pain. Every good thing in my life, I earned myself. You wouldn't even hold an umbrella over me when I was freezing in the snow. Now you want to build me a house? It's too late. Late apologies and empty promises are worth less than the dirt under my fingernails from planting flowers. That's when Jasper walked in. He stepped up behind me, wrapped his arm around my waist, and looked Killian dead in the eye. "She told you to leave. This is your only warning." Killian left, but he didn't give up. That night, he hired men to break into my shop. They smashed every vase, stomped every bloom, destroyed every piece of equipment I owned. I walked in the next morning to see the wreckage, and I didn't cry. Because an hour later, the entire town showed up. They brought lumber, flowers, paint, and worked through the night to rebuild my shop better than it was before. Jasper found Killian at the motel on the edge of town. He didn't fight him. He just said, "You think she's a thing you can buy. But she's a person. You broke her for 6 years. I'll spend the rest of my life putting her back together. You come near her again, and you'll regret it for the rest of your miserable life." Killian left town the next day. We got married that weekend, in the little white church on the hill, surrounded by the town that became our family. I wore a simple white dress, the chamomile hairpin Jasper carved for me in my hair. I looked out the church doors as we said our vows, and saw Killian standing in the tree line, watching. He stayed there the entire ceremony, and when it was over, he turned and walked away. I never saw him again. 6 months later, I got the news. Killian had lost his entire inheritance. His grandmother had stripped him of his title and his shares in the company, after the hit-and-run scandal and the Astor family's lawsuit ruined the Voss name. He'd started drinking heavily, and on a snowy Chicago night, drove his car off a pier into Lake Michigan. When they pulled his body from the water, the only thing he had on him was a crumpled birthday card I'd written him when I was 19. I'd slipped it into his study, hidden in a book. It said, "Wishing you peace, always." He'd kept it all those years. People ask me if I feel bad. I don't. I don't hate him anymore. I just feel nothing. He made his choices, and he lived with them. Today, I'm 32 years old. My flower shop has locations across Montana and Wyoming. Jasper and I have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. We live in a cabin on the edge of town, with a field of chamomile in the front yard. My parents live 10 minutes down the road, with their own little farm, happy and free. I learned the hardest lesson a person can ever learn: no one is coming to save you. The only person who can give you freedom is yourself. The love you beg for from someone who keeps breaking you? It's not worth it. You deserve someone who pulls you into the light, not someone who keeps you hidden in the dark. And if you're in that dark place right now, hold on. Keep going. Your freedom is waiting for you. You just have to be brave enough to walk away, and choose yourself. It's the best decision you'll ever make.